When a black man walked into a Charleston courtroom to fight a simple property fine, he expected a fair hearing. Instead, the judge humiliated him, slapped him with an outrageous penalty, and made it clear in front of everyone that this was personal. What the judge didn't know was that the man standing before him wasn't just any defendant. He was a seasoned federal prosecutor with the power and the evidence to expose the judge's darkest secret. What happened next would shake the courthouse to its core. The rain had just stopped when Marcus Ellison stepped out of his car in front of the Charleston Municipal Courthouse. The pavement glistened under a pale morning sun, the smell of damp asphalt lingering in the air. It was 9:03 a.m., later than Marcus liked for anything involving the law. As a federal prosecutor, punctuality was more than habit. It was part of his DNA. But that morning had gone off script the moment he got a call from his team about a drug trafficking suspect trying to jump bail in Atlanta. He'd spent nearly 40 minutes coordinating with U.S. Marshals before racing back toward Charleston. The errand today was supposed to be simple, an appeal on an outrageous code violation. The city had fined him nearly $1,200 for what they claimed was an unauthorized structure on his property, the tool shed his late father had built 20 years ago. It wasn't about the money, it was about principle. His father had been a shipyard worker, a man of few words but unshakable values, and Marcus had promised his mother he'd fight to keep the property exactly as it was. He locked his car and strode toward the courthouse, his tall frame cutting a sharp silhouette in a tailored charcoal suit. His briefcase swung in rhythm with his steps, the weight of neatly tabbed documents inside. The Charleston Municipal Courthouse was a far cry from the polished federal buildings Marcus was used to. The beige walls were peeling in corners, the air smelled faintly of mildew, and the chairs looked like they'd been rescued from a yard sale. He checked the docket board on the wall. His case was slotted for 9 a.m. in courtroom 1B, presided over by Judge Harold Green. Marcus had heard the name before, whispered in defense attorney circles. The Hammer, they called him, known for being strict, impatient, and according to some, carrying a bias that wasn't just in his rulings, but in the way he looked at people. When Marcus stepped into the courtroom, the proceedings were already underway. Judge Green sat at the bench, his pale face framed by thinning white hair, glasses perched low on his nose. His voice was sharp, his tone dismissive. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Marcus joined the standing crowd, his eyes scanning the room. He noticed something immediately. A young white man had just slipped in late and taken a seat without so much as a glance from the judge. By the time Marcus's name was called, Green's mood had settled into something resembling irritation wrapped in authority. "Mr. Ellison," the judge said, his eyes narrowing as Marcus approached the podium. "You were late." Marcus set his briefcase down, clasping his hands behind his back. "Your Honor, I apologize. I had urgent matters." That Green cut him off. "This court is not interested in your excuses. The schedule is posted for a reason. Tardiness shows disrespect to these proceedings." Marcus's jaw tightened. "With respect, Your Honor, You will pay a fine," Green interrupted, his voice carrying across the small room. $500 for contempt due to tardiness." There was a ripple through the courtroom. Marcus glanced to the side. Two people had come in after him, both white, neither fined, neither even addressed. "Your Honor," Marcus said slowly, "are these fines applied to all late arrivals?" Green's eyes sharpened. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "I'm asking if the rule applies equally." The gavel struck once. "Your fine stands. Move on to your case." Marcus said nothing more. He opened his file, presented the evidence that the shed was grandfathered in under prior zoning laws, and watched Green flip through the papers with clear disinterest. The ruling was tabled for further review. When the session ended, Marcus didn't leave. He sat in the back as the courtroom emptied, watching Green shuffle papers at the bench. Something in Marcus's gut told him this wasn't a one-off. After 5 minutes, he rose and walked to the podium again. The clerk gave him a confused glance. Green looked up, annoyed. "Mr. Ellison, the court is adjourned. If you have further issues." Marcus reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a black leather case. He set it on the podium and flipped it open, revealing the gold Department of Justice seal. "My name is Marcus Ellison," he said, his voice low but carrying. "I'm an assistant United States attorney for the Southern District of Georgia. I specialize in organized crime, public corruption, and civil rights violations." The judge's hand froze mid. The bailiff looked from Marcus to Green, sensing the shift. "I was late," Marcus continued, "because I was on a call with federal agents about a fugitive tied to a trafficking ring. That's the truth. What I can't ignore is watching 3 white defendants walk in late this morning without consequence, while I'm fined immediately and publicly." Green cleared his throat. "Mr. Ellison, if you have a complaint..." "Oh, I'll be filing one," Marcus said, "with the State Judicial Review Board, and if my suspicions are confirmed, with the Civil Rights Division in D.C. The silence in the room was thick. Green's lips pressed into a bloodless line. Marcus picked up his badge, nodded once, and left without another word. That afternoon, Marcus dictated a detailed report from memory, timestamps, case numbers, names of witnesses. He sent it to the DOJ Civil Rights Division and his own office's leadership. 3 days later, an investigator from the State Judicial Review Board called. They wanted records of Green's courtroom for the past 5 years. Marcus agreed to cooperate fully. Patterns emerged quickly. Fines for black defendants were consistently higher, sometimes triple for identical infractions compared to white defendants. Late arrivals, nearly all black defendants were fined or reprimanded. Almost none of the white defendants were. A former clerk came forward quietly, confirming she'd seen the disparity for years but feared retaliation. The bailiff, a stocky middle-aged man named Frank Dawson, testified under oath. It was obvious. He went easier on white folks. Everyone knew it, but no one wanted to cross him. The story broke when a local reporter tipped by an anonymous source in the courthouse published an article titled, "Is Justice Equal in Judge Green's Courtroom?" Records suggest otherwise. Within days, the Charleston Post and Courier was joined by CNN, NPR, and the Associated Press. The community was divided. Some defended Green as old school and fair but firm. Others said they weren't surprised at all. Protests formed outside the courthouse. Signs read, "Justice shouldn't see color and accountability for all." Marcus avoided the cameras, but the narrative was out. His name was mentioned in articles, though he refused interviews. "It's not about me," he told a colleague. "It's about the system." 2 weeks into the investigation, Green was summoned for a closed-door hearing before the Judicial Review Board. By then, over 30 individuals, defendants, lawyers, even former staff had given testimony about bias in his courtroom. When the preliminary report was released, it was damning. Black defendants were fined 280%, more than white defendants for the same violations. Requests for payment plans from black defendants were denied twice as often. Late arrival penalties were applied to black defendants 92% of the time, white defendants 14%. The board recommended Green be suspended pending a formal disciplinary hearing the next morning. Green announced his resignation effective immediately. In his brief statement, he denied intentional bias but admitted mistakes may have been made. For Marcus, it wasn't a victory parade. It was a reminder of how deep the rot could run. But it was also proof that silence wasn't the only option. Within 6 months, Charleston's municipal court had undergone a quiet revolution. A new judge with a reputation for fairness was appointed. All court staff underwent mandatory bias and ethics training. An independent oversight panel was created, with community advocates holding seats alongside legal professionals. Marcus was invited to speak at law schools and bar association events about the case. At one such event, a young black law student approached him. "You made me believe I can actually change something in this system," she said. Marcus smiled. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts when someone refuses to let the wrong thing slide. A year later, Marcus stood on the courthouse steps, the same steps he had walked up on that rainy morning. The building looked the same, but the atmosphere was different. In his office, the $500 contempt fine sat framed on his wall, not as a badge of shame, but as a reminder of the day he refused to swallow injustice quietly. And whenever a new case crossed his desk involving abuse of authority, Marcus would lean back, look at that frame, and think, "This is why I do it."